Are you able to see my screen, Doug?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to stop the recording though.
Committee meeting for Friday, July 29, 2022, as permitted by the governor's disaster declaration of now July 22nd. The determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee yet. To ensure that the meeting is as transparent as possible, Cmap posted the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance. We'll provide a recording of this meeting linked on their website, and we will take all votes by roll call. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast. Committee members, please remember to state your name when you're making a motion or second to help those taking notes. And members of the public, if you'd like to make a public comment, just message staff during the meeting and they will unmute you during that time. So Mary will now call the roll for us. Go ahead, Mary.
Good morning. I'm going to read off the names of the committee members who I see on the call. Chuck Abraham, Mike Clemens, Lynette Ciravella.
Here.
Leah Mooney.
Hi.
John Paul Deepla.
Here.
Doug Ferguson.
Here.
Jessica Hector Sue.
Here.
Mike Vanderhoof.
Mike sent a message in the chat saying that Tom Kessel plans to attend and he will vote for Ida until Tom arrives.
Thank you. Heidi Lichtenberger.
Present.
Eric Llewellyn.
Here.
Tara Orban.
Here.
Jackie Forbes.
Here.
Mayor Rockingham.
Here.
Joe Schofer.
Here.
Chris Snyder.
Here.
Scott Weber.
Here.
Audrey Wenink. And Rocco Zucchero.
Happy to be here.
Are there any other committee members on the call whose name I missed?
Yeah, Christina County.
Oh, Christina, got you. Thank you very much.
And hi, I'm not sure whether you can see me at all, but this is Ryan Hull from Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, or Christopher Hebert.
Got it. Thank you very much.
And Jake
John Donovan.
for CDOT.
I apologize. Who was the last person who spoke?
Big Krishnamurthy from CDOT.
Great, thank you.
And John Donovan is here. I just came on a little late.
Gotcha, John. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mary, and thank you, everyone else. Let's go ahead and move on to item 2, agenda changes and announcements. There are no agenda changes or announcements that I have. Do we have any other announcements?
We do not.
All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes from our June 3rd meeting. You'll note that we included a little more detail this time based on some comments last time from Leah. So there are more details about some of the discussion that we had, important discussion that we had during the meeting. With those in front of us, do we have a motion to approve those as presented?
Leon Rockingham, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great, thanks, Leah. Second by Leah. Do we have any questions or discussion? Nope. All right, Mary, go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Chuck Abraham.
Aye.
Mike Clemens.
Aye.
Lynette Ciravella.
Aye.
Leah Mooney.
Aye.
John Paul Deepla.
Aye.
Doug Ferguson.
Aye.
Jessica Hector Sue.
Aye.
Mike Vanderhoof. Or Tom Kelso in the chat. Heidi Lichtenberger.
Aye.
Christina Kopkowski.
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn.
Aye.
Ryan Holt.
Well, aye. Aye.
Tara Orban.
Aye.
Jackie Forbes.
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham, Joe Schofer,
Aye.
Vig Krishnamurthy,
Aye.
Chris Snyder,
Aye.
Scott Weber,
Aye.
Audrey Wenink, and Rocco Zucchero.
Yes.
Jessica, this is Kama. For the record, Tom Kelso voted aye in the chat. And we also have Steve Schulke representing IDOT District 1 who joined, if you'd like to call him to vote.
Also, my screen froze up. It's an aye for me also. Mayor Rockingham.
Thank you, Mayor Rockingham. And then, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say go ahead. Yes, let's call the additional IDOT person to vote.
Okay, so we've got Mayor Schelke. Or no, I apologize, wrong name. Would you remind me, please, who just joined for IDOT?
Steve
Steve Schulke with that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Steve Schelke, gotcha.
Great, thank you so much. The motion carries. Let's go ahead and move on to item 4, Cmap board meeting updates. For this, Executive Director Allman will be giving us an update on Cmap and board activities. Off to you, Erin.
Hi, I feel like I've spent a lot of time with this group this week already, so thank you for your contributions to all of the conversations we've been having. The board will meet in September. We are planning to have an in-person meeting of our board in September. We will also hold our annual joint meeting of the board and the MPO Policy Committee in October as well. Wanted to just remind folks that the On-to 2050 plan update is available for public comment through Saturday, August 13th. So we will then be working on responding to comments, cleaning up the draft, and bringing that to the joint meeting in October for approval. So, you know, again, I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that we've done this week. I recognize that many of you have been in these conversations already, but for those of you who have sent delegates to those conversations or have not been personally involved, we've been doing a lot of work around coordination for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act here. We held our second convening of the region's project implementers to identify, prioritize, and build consensus around our most competitive, regionally significant projects, to make sure that we're maximizing our funding opportunities as we move forward. I had shared with that group that I was in DC a couple weeks ago with other metropolitan regions, and many of them are prepping consensus lists that they're able to hand off to USDOT to put in the hands of their elected officials as they go to DC to talk about the important needs of their regions. I want to get us ready to do the same, and I know that all of you have been at the table trying to figure out how we can do that and make sure that we're putting our best effort forward as we look to the next few years of competitive grant opportunities here. As part of that process, we worked on a draft goal statement that I think really highlights why it is we're doing this, which I'll just read it to you here. It says that working together with a shared vision of prioritized investment, we can foster better, more competitive applications that result in more dollars granted, more projects becoming a reality, yielding a stronger, more equitable and resilient region. So again, we talked a little bit about project readiness. Our partner, John Donovan from FHWA, came and talked a little bit about project evaluation processes and his experience and how that works at the federal level here. There are 3 more meetings scheduled for August, September, and October, but our immediate next steps are really to work with the group to develop that project list, to really look at sort of the asset, the value of these projects and the value that they bring to this region, and how those values align with what the federal administration is pursuing right now through the IIJA, really thinking about prioritizing investment, making sure that we're thinking about inclusive growth and equity, and resiliency of our region and our system and our transportation assets as well. We'll keep you posted as that work continues. I just wanted to give you a few highlights there. We have also been working and confirming with a few members from this committee and others from across the region to think about what we need to do, what sort of subcommittees we might need to have on what topics related to our work. This advisory committee will consider additional groups that Cmap will convene. to inform or manage the new work from IIJA. The small group will meet twice in August and once in early September. It includes representatives from IDOT, county, municipal, transit, City of Chicago, and our councils of governments as well. You may recall that Secretary Osmond directed the Transportation Committee and Cmap to convene this group at their last meeting last quarter. We'll be submitting findings to the Secretary, the MPO Policy Committee, and the Cmap Board at their October meeting here. Again, our peers across the country are really looking at how they best convene groups on what topics to advance the issues, the new policy issues that are related to IIJA. So we're using this opportunity just to really look at all of the subcommittees, the working groups, the task forces that we've had related to transportation. We did this on the regional economy space and in the climate space on some of our other committees, but we held off on looking at the holistic realm of our transportation committees based on the fact that we knew things were changing and we had not been able to get into the policy priorities of the infrastructure bill related to transportation. So just to give you like one example and some context, we've historically had a bike ped committee, but with the work that we've been doing around safe and complete streets, combined with the fact that IIJA requires the Metropolitan Planning Fund set aside a certain percentage of their planning dollars for complete streets activities. I believe it's like 2.5%. It could be really strategic for us to make sure that we're aligning that committee with the mission of this group and some of the work of the agency moving forward. So again, we'll be working up some recommendations here, but more to come. And I know that Jessica and Kevin Carrier from this committee are going to be involved in that process. You've also probably heard me talk about our mobility recovery work. The Mobility Recovery Steering Committee met for the 5th time yesterday. They were formed in early 2021 to help us think about the transportation challenges that have come on due to COVID-19 and thinking about how we can make sure that policy changes and future needs are consistent with On to 2050. We know, again, that a number of critical issues existed before the pandemic related to our transportation system and the ability for all people to get around. But now really is a good opportunity for us to be thinking proactively about how we address those solutions. We had RTA come to the meeting yesterday and give us sort of a look at where their concerns are related to the fiscal cliff related to the operations of the transit systems across our region. There are some big gaps that are on the horizon and we need to be thinking strategically. We need to be thinking innovatively about how we close those gaps. And so we've been working with this group to develop not only some policy recommendations for things that we'd like to see across the region that would help people get to jobs, people get to healthcare, people get to home in efficient ways, but also what are the things that we're actually going to have to ask for as and think about what we need to go to Springfield for as we advocate for some of the needed policy changes that are on the horizon here. So again, this work will lead then directly into the work of the agency around the Cmap RTA legislation that the General Assembly passed recently and the governor signed. We are supposed to provide the General Assembly with a report of recommended strategies to address the long-term financial viability of public transit. It'll be due January 2024, but essentially that gives us a little over a year to draft that report, get those recommendations together. And it's more than just the financial viability of transit. It's really thinking about safety, it's thinking about governance, it's thinking about sort of all sorts of issues related to our transportation system and our transit system specifically. So again, the RTA strategic planning work and Cmap's mobility recovery work will be sort of the grounding research and analysis that we'll be using to build that work that'll be due in end of 2023, early 2024. So more to come on that. And then just a couple other notes too. My team has been out, myself, I've been out talking to folks about the work that we do here at Cmap and the value of our work to the region. A lot of the fundamental data and analysis that we do is just critical for you all moving your projects forward. And there's a lot of other work that we do as well, our local technical assistance work, and again, transportation modeling as well. Since 2016, our local contributions have remained steady. As the federally mandated MPO for the region, we provide, again, foundational data for all of our transportation assets across our region here. IDOT contributes $3.5 million annually to our regional funding, and locals must make up the remainder. And since 2016, that's been about $885,000. After doing the math with the increase of the funds for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we need to double the local contributions that we have. So we've been putting forth a strategy. We've been talking to our county partners. We've been talking to our municipal partners, and we'll soon be talking to the RTA and our transit partners about local contributions. This matching dollars really unlock the 80% of federal planning funds that come to our region, and again, allow us to do the transportation improvement program work that we need to do to help program the over $200 million of federal funds that come to our region through STP local. But also we have the Cmap program, the TAP program, the STP shared fund program. So all of those dollars are unlocked by us existing. So if I haven't talked to you, I may have talked to somebody at your organization a little bit about this as well, but we have been out talking to folks about the need to increase local contributions to match all of the federal dollars. So we are making sure that we're not leaving a single federal dollar on the table. And then just a couple of highlights before we get into our agenda today. You'll see a couple important initiatives as well. We're excited to share the results of our pavement management project, which really reinforces our commitment to prioritize our existing infrastructure before investing in new infrastructure. You'll also hear an update on our safety action agenda from Vicki, which is now folding into a broader Safe and Complete Streets program, which will help us maximize, again, the opportunities that are presented by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We are also working to collaborate with our partners to see if there's an opportunity for us to take a lead role in coordinating an application for Safe Streets funding so that we can best meet the needs of our region and think about our bicycle, pedestrian, our multimodal network in a meaningful way, given the fact that there's a lot of planning dollars on the table right now for us to look to be successful in achieving. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Just wanted to highlight a few things that we've had going on over the past couple of months here at Cmap.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions from anyone? No questions. All right, we appreciate the update. Let's go ahead and move on to item 5, items for approval. We have one item for approval today. It's federal fiscal year 2019 to 2024 TIP amendments and administrative modifications. And for this, we have Russell sharing with us again.
Hey, good morning. Before I discuss the TIP changes, I wanted to update the committee on changes that we have been making to the eTIP database as we implemented the IIJA. So the IIJA created new funding opportunities and challenges. The eTIP database has been updated to incorporate nearly all of the new funding codes associated with the infrastructure bill. All told, I believe we have 24 new TIP fund codes that have been added. Some of the highlights include we used to have just one bridge fund code, STP bridge. We now have bridge state, we have bridge local, and we have the competitive bridge fund codes too. We also have new programs such as EVs, Protect, Carbon Reduction Fund codes, All Stations Accessibility Program. The new work types, such as the EV infrastructure and EV vehicles, were also added to the TIP. Finally, the programming marks were also updated to reflect the funding amounts as seen in the IIJA. These amounts included increases in every fund category and the addition of new funding categories. Additionally, programming marks reflect annual increases in funding amounts shown in the IIJA. So that's a change from past practice where we would have whatever the current year's funding, we would just hold that constant for all the years of the TIP. Because the IIJA contains annual increases for many of the programs, any program that contains an increase, we have reflected that in our programming marks in the TIP. One fund that I do want to highlight, of course, is Bridge. Which surprisingly enough, we've been doing bridge work in this region for a long time, but there actually wasn't a dedicated bridge revenue stream from the federal government. Bridge now has state bridge and local bridge, similar to what we've done for STP. There's also competitive bridge program, which is out right now. It has a NOFO and people can apply for that. At this time, the new bridge funds in the TIP will be divided between IDOT and local projects. So there's already a local bridge program. It's just being funded with bridge funds directly now from FHWA. All right, getting back to the memo. Included in your packet today is a memo detailing the 68 TIP changes contained in formal TIP Amendment 22-07 and the 194 TIP changes contained in Administrative Amendments 2207.1 and 22-07.2. As seen in the memo, formal amendments resulted in an increase of $117 million in total project costs for all prior, current, and future years. There are 29 new projects that I wanted to highlight that were added to the TIP. But as you can see, the new projects only added $43 million, which is about $1.5 million per project. Almost all of these were mainly IDOT maintenance projects on bridges. So IDOT spending a bunch of money maintaining some of the bridges in their current system. Administrative amendments added $85.5 million to the TIP in all prior, current, and future years. Primarily, this came from new projects also. The net change for the total cost in the TIP from all amendments resulted in $202.5 million being added to the TIP in prior, current, and future years. As shown in the memo, new projects such as the ones I highlighted and the addition or removal of project phases comprise most of the formal changes. Administrative amendments were more evenly distributed amongst AC, ACC changes, cost changes, and schedule changes. The amendments, along with the memo, were posted on July 22nd for committee and public review. Approval of formal TIP Amendment 2207 is requested at this time, and I can answer any questions if there are any.
Great, thank you, Russell. Let's go ahead and take a motion in a second, and then we'll have some discussion if needed. Do I have a motion to approve TIP Amendment 2207?
Tara Orban.
Thanks, Tara. That was a motion. For a second, I think I heard Mike Clemens.
Sure, I'll second.
Yes, great, thanks. All right, any questions for Russell?
I have a question, Russ. Just in general, I know you said that there's like 24 new funding codes added, and then you also said project types or project categories. Is there, as you were talking, I was like looking on Cmap's website to see, is there a way to see like what those funding sources are? Like, is there a summary somewhere where that information is available?
There is a way to see all the funding sources because they're included in a document that has all the funding sources. I don't think, and Canva could answer this if she wanted to, that we highlighted which ones are new versus which ones are not new. It's just a cumulative of all the funding sources. It lists like, each one. In the TIP, not the TIP, let's see, if you were on the Cmap webpage and you went to programs and then you went to TIP and then you went to programmer resources, there are both work types and funding sources that are shown as a PDF. And we're constantly updating those. I think the most current ones are from July. So we just update it. We don't necessarily highlight what's new. It's just, this is the most current document kind of thing.
But there is a document that has the work types that would include the new ones that you mentioned?
Yeah, we can, and Kama, I believe, is on the meeting. She can probably post it into chat.
Thank you. Yeah, just professional curiosity. Just to take a peek at it. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Great question. I did see that Kama posted it in the chat, the TIP fund codes. So
look at you guys. Great.
Yeah. Aaliyah, do you have a question?
Yeah. Actually, as I was reviewing the TIP list, I noticed all the bridge projects, and I thought that was really great. Bridge maintenance has been a topic, I think, in terms of transportation policy and needing funds for that for decades. And I was trying to understand where those were all coming from. It's great to hear the update. I think I caught all of it. Russell, it was kind of fast. Sorry. And I just want to make sure. So what I understood from your update was that there are a couple new bridge revenue streams that have new codes. And Tara, thanks for asking for the codes. I appreciate that. I'm curious too. And that has resulted in actually new projects being added to the TIP for bridge maintenance. Did I get that right?
I think that they would have been adding the projects anyways. They just, for whatever reason, FHWA did not have a dedicated funding stream just for bridge in the past. The new funding bill does have it. So they probably would have been added anyways, but they're being added with the new fund codes and the new funding source, and not having to use STP funds to do bridge work, or NHPP funds, which IDOT would often use.
Like they're not under the umbrella of STP anymore, right? I mean, they're their
not
own separate
under
thing.
any other fund source. They're under their own umbrella now. So
That frees up STP projects. Is that a takeaway here, or does it accelerate the pace that we're doing the bridge work?
I think it does both. It allows them to advance because there's more funds. There is about, and I had to move one thing. There's about, in the current year, when we updated the programming marks, I want to say about $550 million was added to the TIP as programming marks. So there's complicated formulas that are involved in how all this stuff trickles down into the programming mark. But in general, there are more money for everything. So when we get a dedicated revenue stream like bridge, it frees up funds in other fund sources. Plus there's additional funding just contained in the bill. So we have a lot of opportunities for the region to advance maintenance projects such as what these are in an expeditious way. I will say most of the stuff though was added is for programming in like 25. So they're not ready to go yet, but they're queuing stuff up.
Thank you.
And Russell, to clarify though, you can still use NHPP or STP on bridge. It's just that there's an additional stream.
You can. The eligibilities have not changed, but since there's bridge funds that didn't exist before, you'd probably want to use NHPP for stuff that bridge doesn't cover.
Correct.
Also good, very good questions. Audrey. Audrey, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you. No, can't hear you. We'll give you a minute to try and, oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks for your patience with that. I noticed that in the new projects, there are a couple roadway expansions. It looks like there are 6 miles of improvements that are being made. Let's see, I'm looking for my notes here. Yeah. There are two roadway expansion projects, one that's adding 1.6 miles of road and another is adding 6 miles of road arterials. And I just wanted to understand what is the process for thinking about the maintenance of such roadways, because I was looking at the Illinois State Performance Management reporting that FHWA does, and I see that between 25 to 40% of our non-interstate lane miles are in good condition. So that's like not even half. And we're adding arterial roadways. And so I want to understand what is the justification for adding lane miles of arterial roadways when we have such a large proportion of our pavement not in good condition. How do we reconcile that with our pavement management investments?
Are you directing that question to IDOT?
Yeah, that might be the right place to go.
Okay.
Well, I guess this is Steve. There's a couple things there. As far as our pavement condition, we do follow the Transportation Asset Management Plan. That has kind of transformed what we've been doing in the past. So that's more performance-based and trying to do repairs at the right time. Some more what's called smart resurfacings. So with that though, those our roads were in really good shape. We've benefited off that 55-45 split. So we were able to get a lot of our roads in good shape. Now the other districts aren't in even worse shape than what you just read. And so right now we've just adapted that about 4 years ago. So we do have a pretty robust program that's being implemented throughout the whole state, and it's all following the federal policies. As far as road expansion projects, those are also reviewed, and we also have on our website the data-driven decision matrix, which looks at a number of factors for what routes, given the sheer need of capacity type projects. Those are looked at through the lens of safety, and certainly capacity is one of those. So right now we have several programs to address both the maintenance side and the route capacity side. So I would, they're all on IDOT's website. So data-driven decisions is the capacity one, and then CAMP is what we follow, which is the federal process for maintenance.
And just to clarify, in the formal amendments that you will be voting on, we don't add road expansion projects. These were not new projects. They just switched around a little bit of funding, but these were long-term projects that had already gone through. One I'm looking at, the 6 Mile one, it has been in the TIP since 2015. So we didn't add anything in terms of expansion to the TIP. They just did some changes on funding.
That's a good point. Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, thanks for that overview and that reminder, Russell, about the amendments that we're looking at now. Further questions, Audrey, or other questions, anyone else? No? All right, well, let's go ahead and take a vote then, Mary.
Okay, Chuck Abraham,
Aye.
Mike Clemens,
Aye.
Lynette Ciavarella,
Aye.
Leah Mooney,
Aye.
John Paul Diepla,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson,
Aye.
Jessica Hector Sue.
Aye.
Tom Kelso, if you would please indicate your vote in the chat. Heidi Lichtenberger,
Aye.
Christina Kotkowski,
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn,
Aye.
Ryan Hole,
Aye.
Tara Orban,
Aye.
Steve Schilke,
Aye.
Jackie Forbes,
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham,
Aye.
Joe Schofer,
Aye.
Vig Krishnamurthy,
Aye.
Chris Snyder,
Aye.
Scott Weber,
Aye.
Audrey Wenink,
Aye.
and Rocco Zucchero.
And for the record, for those in listen-only mode, Tom Kelso did vote yes in the chat.
Thank you, Kimma.
Great, thank you. I don't think we got Rocco, but the motion will carry. So let's go ahead and move on to information items. We have 3 information items for today. The first one is a regional transit strategic plan update. And for this one, I actually have several people from the RTA team and the strategic plan project team to help give this update today. I have Peter Kirsten from my strategic planning team. He's the project manager for the project, and he'll be giving you an overview of the work to date that we've done in a moment. We also have with us Doug Anderson, our manager of budget, and he's managing the 10-year financial plan portion of this work. He won't be presenting anything, but he's on the call, so that if we want to talk about that in any more detail, we can do so. And then we have Tina Fassett-Smith from our communications team on as well. She'll be sharing some links as we go. So a bit of a team effort. We also shared a big chunk of this same presentation with the recovery planning group yesterday that Aaron was mentioning. So forgive us for some repetition if you're in both meetings. I will say yesterday we focused more on the 10-year financial plan and the $700 million budget gap that we see coming in a couple of years. Today, we're not going to focus as much on that. There's a little bit about that, but we're going to focus more on some of the immediate action items that we're eyeing, emerging from this initial outreach that we've done, to get some feedback from all of you on those items now and as we'll be doing throughout the summer. So the focus of the two presentations is a little bit different, even though a lot of the content is the same. So Doug, you can go ahead and move into our slides. Go ahead and go on to the next one. Before I hand it off to Peter, I'll just note that we probably don't need to tell you that COVID has completely changed transit. Transit was an essential lifeline for many people before the pandemic. It was an essential lifeline for many people during the pandemic. And right now we're carrying about 900,000 people a day, which is less than before the pandemic, but is still a lot of people. But we know transit often doesn't meet all of people's needs. And the historic funding model that we have that is largely based on fares, or at least half based on fares, is not going to work in the future. So what we're doing is we're thinking about change. RTA specifically is committed to change, and both change that will meet the needs for today and what we need at this very moment, but also the needs of the future. And so that's really the focus of this project, is preparing for both of those things. Over the last year, we have been working with a lot of stakeholders. Many of you have been involved in those discussions to establish a vision and a 10-year financial plan for the region. We have also developed some priority goals and some strategies that talk about how we're actually going to make change, and really working to grow a coalition of people who can partner with us in some next steps. So we're here today to share this with you in the hopes that you will support us in pushing some of these ideas forward as we work through them over the summer and into the fall, and bring the plan to our board for adoption in January. Again, we don't just want a plan on the shelf, but we want some items that are ready for advocacy and action in 2023. And as we work with Cmap on the report that Aaron was talking about to the General Assembly, we also want to be in lockstep on those items as well. So I am going to hand this off to Peter now to share more about the project, but please do pay attention to the project and stay engaged. So off to you, Peter.
Thanks, Jessica, and go ahead to the next slide. Again, my name is Peter Kirsten. I'm a planner with RTA, and I'm going to walk through an update on this. If you've heard us talk about this project previously, you've likely seen this slide. We're developing the strategic plan across 3 concurrent tracks. In green at the top is the financial planning track, which will develop a 10-year financial plan alongside the strategic plan in maroon, both being informed by engagement to track transparency, accountability, and create some opportunities for mutual learning with our growing body of stakeholders. So we're now very much in the middle of this process, developing the content of the plan, aiming for release of the draft at the end of this year, and then this plan will be adopted by our board in early 2023. Next slide. So before we jump into the plan update, I just want to speak briefly about the state of the transit system and specifically transit funding, which Jessica alluded to. As a quick review, remember that funding for transit in our region comes from 2 main sources, which in the decade of the 2010s was largely sufficient to balance our operating expense. So that the first is public funding, which again is primarily the RTA sales tax, as well as the State Public Transportation Fund and some other state and local sources. Overall, sales tax has performed much better than expected during the pandemic, and it is in fact currently well above pre-pandemic levels. The second source is operating revenue, which is primarily the fares paid by riders on the system. Prior to the pandemic, the system revenue exceeded $1 billion per year. In 2021, it was less than 400 million, a reduction of about 600 million from pre-COVID levels. So thankfully, federal relief funding has been provided to essentially replace that large revenue loss. Next slide. So this chart is another way to capture that. It shows the percent change in weekly ridership compared to the first week of March 2020. So in the early part of the pandemic, ridership fell dramatically, more than 70% off of normal. By late 2021, it slowly started to climb back to about 50% of pre-COVID. CTA, Metro, and PACE are now consistently serving about 900,000 trips on a typical weekday, but ridership remains at about 50% of 2019 levels. And it is the slow recovery of ridership and fare revenue, which has created this ongoing operating budget shortfall. And this is not unique to our region, but this is true of transit agencies throughout the country and even the world that are experiencing this. Next slide. So as ridership has declined, the cost of operating our system has increased. Numbers on this slide are in the millions, so you need to mentally add 6 zeros. In the last full year before COVID, on the far left, we had almost $3 billion of annual operating expense. Expenses declined a bit in 2020 with COVID-related service reductions at Metro and Pace, but then rebounded in 2021 with service restoration and the onset of inflation. Our system's adopted 2022 budget of about $3.4 billion anchors the 10-year period that we are modeling as a part of this planning process, and that's shown in the lighter blue. The regional expense projection on the slide reflects essentially status quo service levels, so there's no service expansion here that is driving the increases. The assumed expense growth is higher than we experienced over the previous decade. And 2026 is highlighted as this is the year that we're forecasting that all COVID relief funding will have been expended, producing the first full year of a budget funding gap. Next slide. So under the assumptions we've collectively made in the 10-year model, the region can expect a budget shortfall of more than $700 million by 2026, which is shown in the right-hand column on this slide. Again, transit operations funding comes from these two sources, sales tax and fares. And while sales tax, we anticipate will continue to be a sustainable source, we expect ridership rebound of only close to about 70% of pre-COVID levels over the 10-year horizon. And the combination of the resulting lower fare revenue, strong sales tax funding will simply not be enough to support the transit system. The shortfall is not new, and in fact, it exists right now, as shown in the left-hand column, which is the 2022 budget figures. The difference is that right now, the service boards are relying on federal COVID relief funding to address that shortfall, but that funding will run out in 2025. So in summary, by 2026, we're expecting about $3.2 billion of revenue, so that's fares and funding, to support a projected expense level of $3.9 billion. That difference, 700 million plus, is the regional number. Although this is shared among the three service boards, they each expect a significant budget gap. That is a daunting number. It's almost 20% of total projected expenses, as shown on the bottom line. And it's dynamic. It's likely to change as we move forward and as we learn more about the recovery in our region. So I'm sharing this up front to emphasize that the work of developing the creative solutions and most importantly, the political will to implement solutions is very much so being done in the midst of knowing that this significant disruption to transit funding is coming within the horizon of this next strategic plan. Next slide. So based on input that we've received in dating back into 2021, kind of at the origin of this project and earlier this year, we've developed a vision for the plan. And I'll read that on the screen here. It's safe, reliable, accessible public transportation that connects people to opportunity, advances equity, and combats climate change. Go ahead to the next slide. Alongside the vision, we have three principles that will continue to guide this work. Those are equity, stewardship, and commitment to change. And the vision and principles have been central criteria for the goals and strategies that we've been developing over the summer here. Go ahead to the next slide. From these vision and principles, we have developed 6 future outcomes. 3 are related to what we want our transit system to be. And 3 are related to the type of region that a great transit system can help build. So in the future, our system will be safe, accessible, reliable, useful for riders, in a state of good repair, and financially stable. In the future, our region will be connected, winning the fight against climate change and made up of thriving communities. Next slide. So we've convened 3 stakeholder working groups, each tasked with recommending goals and strategies tied to the outcomes of the transit system and the region that we're aiming to achieve. The stakeholder working groups are wrapping up now, with each one producing a memo, both documenting the process as well as presenting their recommendations. Additionally, there are 2 technical groups, the 10-year financial plan group and the priority projects group. The technical groups are still engaged in their work. Both are aiming to also produce a memo, again, documenting the process and outlining their recommendations. And those will be complete in the month of September. Next slide. So these stakeholder groups have met 6 times over 12 weeks. We've completed all the meetings now. These groups represent about 100 people from 70+ organizations throughout our region. This included staff from all 3 service boards, as well as Cmap and the RTA. We sought and had success in recruiting diverse voices to participate. And one of the key ways we did this was by offering compensation to individuals for their participation. In total, the 3 working groups developed 29 goals and 131 strategies across these 6 outcome areas. In the next weeks and months, we're going to begin seeking input on areas for stakeholders to support the RTA in advocating for a narrowed group of significant changes, as well as seeking input on areas for immediate action. More on that in a minute. Next slide. In addition to these stakeholder working groups, again, there are these 2 technical groups. These are a little more inward focused and are comprised of RTA, Service Board, and Cmap staff. And the first is the Priority Projects Technical Group. So this group will be advancing the priority project list that was established during the current strategic plan, Invest in Transit. This group will also produce capital investment guidelines to be included in the strategic plan, as well as creating a new project evaluation measure to be applied to projects that make it into the 5-year capital improvement program. Again, this group will continue to meet over the summer, culminating in a memo to be released in September. Next slide. Additionally, the 10-year financial plan technical group, again, also comprised of RTA, Service Board, and Cmap staff. This group is tasked with developing both the financial plan as well as sustainable funding solutions. So the funding gap slides that I showed at the upfront are part of the work of this group. The first task was kind of establishing this official post-COVID relief funding shortfall, predicting both the size and the timing. As there are many factors such as ridership and overall economic performance that will impact the funding structure, this group is also producing a set of scenarios to test how funding is impacted by changes that could be encountered over the planning horizon. So right now, this group is working on a menu of potential funding options that will achieve a sustainable balance in transit operations funding. Lastly, this group will also make recommendations on modifying the current 50% fare recovery ratio requirement as we emerge from the pandemic with a fundamentally different revenue structure. Next slide. In the next phase of plan development, we're going to be focusing on these 2 distinct areas, advocacy and action. So all of the ideas raised under each of these areas come directly from the working group. So the goals and strategies in the memos they have produced, their recommendations. But they also reflect areas that RTA and the service boards see as most critical. So the ideas under the advocacy area are longer term, kind of the more substantive changes to how our regional transit system works. And these largely include changes that the RTA and service boards cannot make alone. Fundamental to this is seeking new sustainable funding for transit. Action ideas are more immediate. These address changing and perhaps unmet needs of riders and the communities that we serve. These are things that the RTA and the service boards can implement and take action on urgently. A complete list is found, can be found at the link that I think is being shared in the chat right now. I'm being told as well that if there's people viewing this meeting, that we will share the link separately with that group, but I believe participants can see the link. So there's a lot of the next 2 slides I'm going to talk through in a second. These come from an even longer list that these working groups produced. But there's a lot that's important to the broad constituency, the coalition that we're building through this process. And I'll mention here too that many of these ideas align with the recommendations coming out of the Mobility Recovery Project that Cmap is leading. We shared a similar presentation with that group yesterday, and we will continue to coordinate with Cmap as these projects and these two lists continue to develop. Next slide. So first, our areas for advocacy. Again, these are kind of the more long-term significant changes that we're advancing. And these first 3 are fundamental to this effort. The work of this planning effort is to build a coalition of stakeholders to secure increased and diversified sustainable funding sources for transit operations. In doing so, we will equitably distribute funds and move away from our over-reliance on fares to fund operations. We'll make the case by continuing to communicate the value the transit system contributes to our region's economic, environmental, and social health in ways and at a scale that nothing else can. Our other key areas requiring more advocacy in order to achieve some of these solutions include reducing first and last mile barriers and supporting communities across our region that are pursuing equitable development around stations, stops, and corridors. Additionally, improving transparency and communication with the public around transit funding and spending. Increasing the funding available for infrastructure investment, in part by seeking more parity in how state and federal funds overwhelmingly support roadways and private auto use over transit. And lastly, pursuing policies we know will improve the reliability and speed of transit trips, and most namely giving buses dedicated right-of-way on roads via rapid transit or BRT. So again, these are the areas for advocacy. These are the longer, more long-term significant changes we're pursuing. We advance to the next slide. These are the areas, or these are the more immediate changes that we're pursuing here. These are the actions that we need to take. Put another way, this is kind of what the RTA and service boards and close partners need to address now. What has the greatest urgency in this moment? So these include increasing safety and security for everyone using the transit system, advancing full accessibility across the system, increasing the quantity and accuracy of real-time travel info, particularly in light of ongoing service disruptions. Simplifying and integrating payment systems across the transit system, as well as offering new free and reduced fare programs. Planning to achieve near zero emissions for the region's transit system and prioritizing equity in that process. Investing in a state of good repair and distributing capital funding in a manner that prioritizes communities with the greatest need. Adapting service to meet riders' changing needs. And increasing access to opportunities via transit. So I will pause briefly here to see if there are any comments on these areas for advocacy or action. On the next slide, I'm going to show you a number of ways that you will have to provide your input if you don't have a comment today or a question today. But I can pause for just a second here to see if anyone wants to come off mute and speak. So hearing nothing, we can advance to the next slide. Again, don't feel like you're on the spot here. We have a host of opportunities to continue to engage with all of you and the organizations you represent, as well as with the general public. This slide shows kind of some key touch points. So we're going to hold a second movers workshop to further clarify the products that came out of the working group and these areas of advocacy and action. So there will be in-person and virtual options for attendance, and this will include a panel followed by a facilitated workshop. This is on August 9th. My colleague, I believe, again, is sharing a link to register in the chat for this meeting, and you are welcome to contact us directly with any questions. As well, we're going to have a public input survey on key topic areas later this summer. We intend to also do rider interviews in August through October. We, of course, will be reporting out to our board, most notably at the next August meeting. There's going to be a big plan update. And then again, we are aiming for a draft strategic plan that would be open for public comment in early December of this year. Next slide. So we're thankful for the opportunity to share this work with this committee. We're thankful for any input that we receive today, or certainly with these future opportunities for engagement. We are seeking to grow this group of close partners and collaborators on these issues. And here are a few ways that we'll hope you'll consider collaboration in this process. So again, please attend the Movers Workshop. Share that invite with others from your organization as well. Help us promote the products of this plan as they are available. Volunteer to endorse plan elements and partner on specific advocacy and action items. And then participate in follow-up discussions now or as we work towards implementation in 2023. So I believe my contact info is in the chat on the links provided. I'm hoping that that will be provided as well to the people that may be viewing this. I invite you to reach out to me or to Jessica Hector Sue with any follow-up feedback, questions, or comments. And thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any from the group, but that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Peter. Any questions for Peter or me or the rest of the RTA team who's online today? I know that was a lot, but there's a lot going on in the transit space. So happy to take any thoughts right now.
Hi, I had a question about one of the last things that Peter said about the plan for rider interviews in August through October. Is there any more you can tell us about how that's going to be managed?
Yeah, that's being led by our communications group, and the plan is that those will take place at public events. So we have kind of a street team that will be going to places. We have identified events in all 6 counties. These are like street fairs type of things. There's a prompt, some information, but it's really, I think, a lot of the what we'll be seeking there is to kind of further help clarify the value that transit brings to the region, understanding how and why people rely on transit, where transit meets them, where they're at, and how it provides access to opportunity. But again, that'll be taking place over the summer.
Yeah, good question, Audrey, and thanks, PK. Any other questions? All right, well, again, please stay engaged, please sign up, please attend these meetings. We are going to have a big budget gap ahead that we need to fill, and we'll definitely need all of your help doing so. So we'll stay in touch on that. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next informational item, the Cmap Pavement Management Program. For this, we have Todd Schmidt, who will give us an update on the program and talk about future actions. Go ahead, Todd.
All right, great, thank you. Doug, you can start the presentation, please. Good morning. Today I'm going to present on Cmap's Pavement Management Program. Cmap is wrapping up its SPR grant. It was awarded to complete pavement management systems and is transitioning to other funds. So it's a good time to provide an overview of the program and share what we've learned so far on pavement management at the local level. So the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, identifies or defines pavement management systems as a set of tools or methods that assist decision makers in finding optimum strategies for providing, evaluating, and maintaining pavements in a serviceable condition over a period of time. So really identifying the right road, the right treatment at the right time. Pavement management system helps agencies move away from a worst-first approach to a more proactive approach, managing its pavement assets, incorporating pavement preservation and maintenance activities to keep pavements in good condition longer and realize cost savings in the long term. The benefits of the pavement management system include a more efficient use of available resources, again, moving away from that worst first approach to more actively maintaining the pavements in good condition. Ability to justify funding needs allows to show pavement condition and see if there's a gap in the funding to maintain pavements at its current condition. More accessible and accurate information on the pavement network is the unbiased analysis of pavement condition and allows for data to be readily available to analysts. Also has the ability to track pavement performance over time. So you go out, you survey your pavement, and then every 4 to 5 years, you go back out and resurvey your pavement, which allows you to have the ability to show the impacts of your pavement program, your preservation program on your network. It also is improved communication tool, which allows agency staff to easily communicate pavement condition through maps and graphics created through the pavement management system and share that with the public. And it supports accountable, performance-based, data-driven decision-making. Pavement management systems support the ON2 2050 principle of prioritized investments and Cmap's commitment to operating and maintaining a modern system for the roads, transit, and freight network in the region. Next slide, please. All the data in Cmap's program was collected in an automated method using high-tech vans. The vans are equipped with LCMS or laser crack measuring systems, cameras that collect high-definition pictures of the right-of-way and pavements. You have a forward-facing camera, 2 side-facing cameras, and also a camera facing downwards, which is collecting the pavement images. They have roadway profilers that measures how rough the road is in the rutting. There's GPS systems on these vans. It's more safe than the traditional method of having analysts go out, evaluate your pavement, measure cracks in the roadway. These analysts are in the van, driving along the roadway in a safe environment. Next slide, please. After the data is collected, the field equipment is processed and the pavement distresses are summarized by type, severity, and extent. This data is then loaded into the paver software where the pavement condition index is calculated. Next slide, please. So what is Pavement Condition Index, or PCI? It's a numerical rating of pavement based on type, quantity, and severity of distresses. It's a rating of 0 to 100, with 0 being the worst or failed pavement and 100 being the best. We required the use of the American Society for Testing and Materials, or ASTM D6433, when evaluating pavements. This is a standard that's it's used industry-wide and very standard. All pavement starts at 100, and the distress data is used to determine deduct values to calculate the PCI. So the consultant would calculate the distress types, quantity, and severity, feed that into the paver database, where the paver database would go and look up those deduct values to calculate the PCI. And on the side, you see the scale of the PCI. Next slide. So again, the pavement management concept in general is getting away from that worst first approach where you go out, you improve your pavement, you don't touch it again for another 10, 15, 25 years. In that time frame, you have to go back and do a major rehab or reconstruction. But pavement management is really actively managing your pavement, implementing those preservation and maintenance techniques to keep your pavement in better condition longer. So it's like brushing your teeth. You go out, you brush your teeth every day. So when you go to the dentist, you don't have your teeth deteriorating, so you're keeping your teeth in good condition for longer, and it probably feels a lot better too. So next slide, please. So the Cmap pavement program approach. Next slide. In Cmap's 2016 municipal survey, we had a series of questions relating to asset management, and we found that 30% of the survey respondents did not have a pavement management system in place, and that 22% did not answer the question. So we don't know if they had a pavement management system or knew what a pavement management system was. This really showed us that we wanted to promote asset management at the local level and implement pavement management systems. We had a call for municipal interest in the winter of 2018. We had about 65 respondents. We were able to fund an initial pilot of 12 plans. As we were kicking off those 12 plans, we applied and was awarded a state planning and research grant of about $2 million to complete as many pavement management plans as possible over the next 3 years. We estimated that we could complete about 40 or 50 plans. Next slide, please. So the program partners, Cmap worked with a number of local governments throughout the agency or region. Once we were awarded the SPR grant, we allowed us to hire AECOM as the program oversight and management firm, and they kind of kept us on budget, on schedule. We also worked with 3 consultants that did the data collection and completed the plans, and they included Applied Research Associates, Infrastructure Management Services, IMS, and Applied Pavement Technology. Next slide. So our program had a standard project scope. We started off with individual kickoff meetings, but then we moved to group kickoff meetings, and this really streamlined the process. And also we realized the cost savings by having these group kickoff meetings, because we're basically just going over introducing the pavement management concept to the communities. And then at the same time, we were providing them with their network and defining their network. So we'd ask them to validate and verify that the network was correct. Once they did that, we went out and collected all the data, and the consultants processed the data. Then we had a Pci reporting meeting, and that was on an individual basis where we met with the municipality and showed them the Pci maps of their network. That was really just to get a feel for if the analysis was correct. We did have some issues where we collected the Pci information in the spring, and then there was a construction season, and then we presented the results in the fall. So there were a few roadway links that were reconstructed or improved, so we had to go back and adjust those Pci based on the construction season. At that meeting, we also asked for bid tabs, annual budget, and then also construction history. So the construction history was used to develop the deterioration curves. The annual budget was used for our budget scenario analysis, and also the bid tabs was also used for projecting the costs and budget scenarios. So we took that information, the consultant ran the analysis. Then we went back and met with each individual municipality to review the draft report and results of the budget scenarios. We also started the discussion of how they wanted for us to present, or the consultant to present to the village board, because we really wanted to get this plan in front of the decision makers and show them the good work that we're doing and show them the network condition of the pavements. We issued a final report, and then we also, like I said, tried to present to the municipal board. The picture on the slide, we made that a requirement in all of our pavement plans. And so that kind of gives a really good picture of PCI values in the pavement for the pavement types. So we required that the consultant took pictures of the pavement for that municipality, so they're able to identify the roadway and that municipality and give really context to the board members. We also supplied an option for the paver software license. So we really wanted them to take up the pavement management system and keep it going. And we provided training. One aspect of our training is once we held the training, they were invited, past participants were invited to future trainings in case they had questions that came up as they were working with the database. Next slide, please. So pavement management program review. Next slide. So far, Cmap has partnered with over 70 municipalities, 1 county, and 1 township to complete pavement management plans. The projects have covered over 1 million people, or 12.9% of the region's population. Through supporting Cmap's core value of pursuing equity, the program focused on the higher need municipalities, those cohort 4 and 3 municipalities initially at the beginning of the stage. Once we worked through them, we then moved on to the applicants that were of moderate or lower need municipalities of cohort 2 and 1. The map on the slide shows the agencies Cmap has partnered with to complete pavement management plans, and all the final plans are available for download on the Cmap website. Next slide. So far, we have completed 5 rounds of projects with 2 in progress. Each round, we work with at least 4 agencies and at least 3 consultants. We've collected over 4,000 miles of pavement condition data on the local system. The weighted average pavement condition for the rounds were ranging from poor and fair, with many of the fair condition very near the PCI cutoff of 55, where pavements are considered poor. Next slide. The graphic on the slide shows the percentage of roadway miles by PCI category. 20.3% of roadway miles were in good condition, 32.2% were in fair condition, and 47.5% were in poor condition. Once you start hitting that poor condition or a PCI at 55 to 50, pavements are no longer really candidates for preservation or maintenance activities. They start falling, deteriorating quickly, and are start become eligible for more major rehab or reconstruction. Next slide. The graphic on the slide shows annual cost to maintain current pavement condition by participant. with local government participants on the x-axis and cost on the y-axis. The blue bars represent the funding necessary to maintain the current condition, and the orange line represents the current annual funding. The graphic shows that most participants do not have enough funds to maintain current conditions. The current annual funding for all participants is $49.9 million, and the funding needed to maintain current conditions is $81.5 million. So it's quite a big difference, but the good news is this data does not include the recent infrastructure bills such as Rebuild Illinois or the IIJA. And then to eliminate the backlog of needed improvements, that would cost $225.4 million annually. Next slide, please. We did some analysis on pavement condition and our economic condition indicators looking at the community cohort. We found that cohort 1, or our lower need communities, had a higher average network PCI than our lower capacity, higher need communities of cohort 4, which had an average PC network of 53, which is poor condition. We had a partner that looked at this earlier in our program. They did a blog post about this, and they did not find the same results that we did. And that's mainly because we really focused on the cohort 4 and 3 at the beginning of the program, and then later we were focusing more on the cohort 1 and 2 communities. Next slide. So what worked in the program? We had an individual staff represent or manage each consultant. So there was 3 staff on board. We had a technical program management support, an independent QC contractor, which was AECOM. They went through all the paver databases to make sure that all the analysis was replicable and can be completed. We had multiple communication channels, the vendor communicating with municipality. We had a project dashboard for each municipality to track where they were on the project. We also had email updates throughout the project. We used a secure file sharing system called Box, which allowed for easy file sharing between the consultant and the municipality. We also had a consistency in approach of deliverables and project execution. So as we went through the program, consultants had developed templates of the project, and we had a very smooth transition from in-person to virtual. We did not have any hiccups moving from in-person to virtual. And then establishing vendor workflow and milestones. Next slide. So what challenges did we face? Stakeholder education. We found over 25% of our communities that worked through a survey that they were not familiar with pavement management systems or preservation and maintenance techniques. So there was a lot of education that went into the program. Municipality concerns with funding. The slide earlier, you saw the gap of the current funding and the need of funding to maintain conditions. So we had a lot of questions about funding. But the good news is with this pavement management system, you have a plan, and maybe it'll help you out with some of those funding opportunities. Prior experiences with preservation treatments. We heard a number of municipalities that tried preservation treatments on those pavements that were in poor condition. And basically all they're doing is, throwing a Band-Aid on a deep wound. It doesn't really help. It doesn't last long. So we had to, educate a lot of folks on when to apply that treatment. Municipality engagement. We required that for each of the meetings that a municipal representative was at a meeting. We had a number of meetings where the municipality staff was did not attend, and we canceled those meetings to make sure that we continually engaged our municipalities. Availability of pavement records. We found a lot of municipalities did not have pavement records. So we had to borrow deterioration curves from neighboring communities or figure out how to use a regional average deterioration curve. And at the beginning of the program, we had a large variation in vendor price and schedule variations, but that's smoothed out as we moved forward with the program. Next slide. So the benefits we noted: increased budget and overall improvement to the pavement program, increased collaboration. This really happened during our training sessions. We had multiple municipalities on the same call or in the room where they're discussing issues with some of the preservation techniques they've used or some of the programs they've used. So having that collaboration was very beneficial for everyone. We were able to quantify current conditions and budget deficiencies, which is critical for change to occur. Being able to see your pavement condition and see how much it costs to maintain that condition was very critical for change to occur. And then the board presentations allow for an independent consultant to support municipal staff and provide reproducible and objective results. We heard stories where municipal staff were talking to the board, but just having that consultant that was there talking about it really helped them get the point across about actively managing the pavements. Next slide. So the successes that we saw, the city of Hickory Hills, additional 150,000 in the first year, 200,000 the second year post-plan release. They're also in the process of updating the pavement condition data. So that's very nice to hear that they're taking the pavement management system and keeping it up to date. The village of Algonquin, 4 local roads added to their STP program, and about to spend roughly $800,000 on roadway improvements that were identified in the plan. Next slide. Village of Lombard maintained local street PCI level of 74, which was elevated to an objective in the village strategic plan. And that score of 74 is a satisfactory pavement condition, so that'd be keeping the pavements in really good condition. Village of Oak Park Forest, they had a crack fill program year 1 and a patch and fill program year 2 post plan release. Next slide. So we also conduct follow-up surveys. We found that of the responding agencies, 53% have maintained or made updates to the paver databases. 86% have performed pavement repair or preservation projects recommended as part of the pavement management plan, and 58% have been able to increase funding to maintain their pavements. So we really like to see these results, that people are not putting these pavement management system plans on the shelf, but they're actively using them and maintaining them. Next slide, please. So what's next? We plan to continue to offer this as part of our technical assistance to communities. I'll also offer that software refresher course, again, keeping communities engaged and allowing them the opportunity to ask questions about their paver databases, about the paver software. Cmap will also champion maintenance and preservation activities through regional talk series to share experiences, because getting folks in the room talking about their experiences about some preservation techniques or what worked and what didn't work is priceless. That really helps out and spreads the word and the advantages of pavement management systems. Next slide. And with that, thank you very much. And I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Todd. Just one question first, and then we'll take questions from others. So, apologies if you said this, but is the project finished now? And this is sort of a post review that you're doing? Or is this something that you plan to continue going forward? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. We are just wrapping up the SPR grant, but we are transitioning to offer this as a service or as a project type in our local technical assistance. So we are going to continue to offer this pavement management system project type through LTA, call for projects.
Okay, thanks for saying that again. Okay, any other questions for Todd?
I had a question, Jessica. Chris Snyder.
Okay.
Todd, so the municipalities or the one county that benefited from the federal or the state grant, for them to continue with the program going forward, is that they have to kind of buy into the fact that they now carry it forward, and so they're bringing on a consultant or somebody else to do the surveys?
That is correct at this time. We haven't discussed on like, can a municipality that participated in the program apply again through the LTA technical assistance grant program. That's TBD. But yeah, the whole point was that they would be awarded this and take the program and move it forward and maintain it in the future.
And do the ratings take into consideration the functional class or ADT of the roadways? So, you know, a 50 or a poor on a major arterial has a more significant need and issue than a 50 on a residential street.
So the rating does not take that into account. It's strictly just pavement distresses and severity and type and quantity. But we did like surveys and broke out the different roadway types, and we found that the higher functional class roadway types were actually maintained to a higher standard than some of those smaller local roads.
Yeah, that's I guess what I meant. I know it's not part of the rating, whether Cmap staff, when you saw such a high percent at the poor level, whether you then dove down a level deeper, and you saw it was kind of more those lower functional class, local roads, I'll call them, and the higher end roads were better maintained. Sounds like that's the case.
Yes.
I have a question as well. First of all, thank you for a very informative presentation, Todd, and I think it complements very well what the state has done without, having their TAMP plan with more of a condition-based, assessment of, a pavement. Just in general, so when we were looking at the chart of the pavement condition and everything, like the thought I had in the back of my head, I'm like, does this, when you did like the municipality, where were, state, county or township roads, like those are all within a municipality or adjacent to, right? So was the assessment and, the that was completed, was that for municipal roadways, or was it comprehensive for everything within the municipality?
It was only for municipal roadways, whatever roadways they had jurisdiction over.
Okay. So no private roadways were excluded then, sometimes like within subdivisions, and then I think you had like one township on there, so township, they had their own. Okay. And then with regards to again, like moving forward, so does each municipality, do they have access to the paver software to manage it themselves?
Yep, so we offered that as an option. Some municipalities took the offer. Some of them did not, but they were offered the opportunities for that paver license. And many of them had consultants that already had the paver license, so they opted out of the paver license, but they have the paver database. And Cmap also kept records or a copy of the paver database. So for those that lose it or need it for some reason, we have it here at Cmap also.
So you have the electronic records, but did they have to buy the paver license, or was it just an option that they could get it as part of this project?
It was an option to get it as part of this project.
Okay. And I guess, has consideration been given to, for perhaps Cmap or, someone to be the technical resource for that? Is that, because our experience has been like, it's something that you only touch a couple times a year, and it becomes, very difficult to like get that again and get familiar, because even like your segments for condition, you might improve part of it, or, a development comes in. So like even breaking those segments and then updating it for your annual plan and, your construction, it does become, it takes effort and time and staff time to manage. So given the consideration that you had some challenges with municipal, engagement throughout the process, do they have the resources to manage it themselves moving forward?
Yeah, it is a lot of work. And like you said, if you don't use it, you forget it, you lose it. So that's why we invited past participants to trainings. So anybody that participated previously are always invited to our most current training classes, so they can ask questions of the consultant if they have any issues. Also moving forward, we'd like to explore maybe hosting paver training for folks, maybe twice a year, so we can continue educating. If somebody leaves your agency that was your paver expert, you have to train somebody else. So having those region-wide trainings will help promote and support the use of paver and continued paver management systems in the region.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage that. I think it's a great idea. Like maybe in the spring and the fall, like when you're looking ahead, because I think if you have a plan, I think the methodology is if you have a planned improvement, you don't include that in your assessment, right? But then you also want to update at the end of construction season, what your condition is. And like you said, this is just going to be another hat that someone at a municipality, wears. So I think that if Cmap can make whatever resources available for folks to continue to manage it, it would be, a great, a really good resource for municipalities to have. I know our team would look for it as well.
Okay, great.
Hey,
Yeah,
Todd,
I
this is
agree.
Rocco. Really, I just want to say really quick. So I've been fortunate to be on the other end of this, working some of the volunteer work doing here in the community I live in, where we actually went through the process. And I have to say, it was very helpful for us to prioritize investments and educate those who may not be fully in the know, not necessarily just the board members, but that the whole worst first mentality had to change a little bit. So, and Chris, to your point about again, seeing how it played out, it didn't identify those major arterials, but you could certainly see, hey, where's the pavement condition within this through the mapping software that was provided within these local streets, and maybe we could let this one go because it's not worth investing in it. So it was really good to see it out. But Tara, I totally agree with you that this is such great information. It would be helpful if there's support for continuing to use this, because it really helps, especially in these tight times with the finances. I know it was good for our community to see and actually use the information. We actually found out we were in pretty good condition comparatively. But yeah, thanks for the efforts. Like I said, it was great to see it from the other end, not just from this the policy side and hearing some of this, but to see it in action in the presentations when you guys came out with ARA and AECOM to do kind of the walk through the results. It was extremely beneficial. So thanks for the efforts.
I agree, Rocco. It really shines a light on, in a very objective way, on what the condition is. And we have to do that for the electeds because they are the ones that, approve the funding, in the near term and the long term. So it is, a very valuable resource to all of us here to educate those on the need for continued investment.
And what was really good when you say that too, in part, sorry, Mayor Rockingham, but it was interesting to, on some of these local residential streets where you hear that, the three people complaining, well, my street is in such bad condition, you need to fix it. And when you're really looking at the analysis, sometimes you see it's just not worth it to fix that street, because it's to spend money just to kind of keep it going along, put your resources somewhere else and, do the proper fix at a later date on the other roadway. So it's, that's a great educational tool too for that on electeds.
Yeah, all good points. It's also the first time I've ever heard pavement management compared to teeth brushing. So Todd, thanks for that one as well. Let's go ahead and move on to the next informational item, which is item 6.3. Vicky is going to give us an update on the safety action agenda update. So go ahead, Vicky.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take a minute here and make sure that I am sharing the right screen. Let's see.
Vicky, right now we see what looks to be a PDF with some notes on it, slides and notes on it.
All right. Okay. Now you're seeing the slides?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Every software is a little different. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Barrett. I go by Vicky, and I'm happy to be here to give you an update on the safety work that we've been doing here at Cmap.
Hey, Vicky. Sorry to interrupt you, but you're back to slides without being in presentation mode, just so you know. Yeah, there now. You're back to the full slide.
Thank you. Thank you. Multiple screens can be a benefit or a curse. Let's see. Okay. So just to give you an overview of the safety work, this committee has been an important part of guiding this effort and starting this program. The mission is to address long-term regional traffic safety issues and be informed by our guiding principles of On to 2050, which include inclusive growth, resilience, and prioritized investment. We've been doing this in a number of ways in the last year. Whoops, let me get back here. Through regional coordination and collaboration, we have established a safety resource group, and we have also been working with partners on technical coordination meetings to understand the issues related to safety in our region. We have been working on policy development on a couple of topics, specifically speed management, which is kind of the primary focus up until this point. We're kicking off bicycle and pedestrian safety issues next. We have just completed 4 safety planning projects, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We have also been working hard to raise awareness, knowing that our ability to bring attention to the topic is one of the things we can do most quickly on the safety space. So we have been doing our best to promote safety within other projects, to include it in our newsletters, and to participate in conferences and other ways to raise awareness about safety in our region. And finally, creating resources. I'll talk a little bit about the need for data and really easy access to data by our local partners. So before jumping into what we've been doing, it's important to go over the latest data for our region. And it's kind of shocking, probably deserves a pause here. 2021 fatality data has been finalized as of about 6 weeks ago and shows 701 fatalities in our region. An issue that we had already identified as a crisis in 2019 has gotten a lot worse. It is a national issue. It's happening across the country, but the regional data really hits home. You know, these 701 fatalities represent friends, family, neighbors, co-workers, many of whom who could be in this space, and is something that we take very seriously as we undergo this work. The pandemic obviously changed travel demand and travel behavior in many ways, and despite a dramatic reduction in VMT in 2020 and parts of 2021, we saw fatalities spike, which means that the rate of fatalities has increased in a shocking way. Speeding is believed to be a major contributing factor nationally, and we have some evidence of it locally, made possible by less congestion on the roadways as people stayed home or their commute patterns changed. But there's also evidence of increased risk-taking in general. So more people took risks, and the people that did take risks often took multiple risks. So the national data show like a combination of impairment and speeding, or impairment and lack of restraint use, or speeding and lack of restraint use that may have contributed to the growing number of fatalities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing to address this and where we're going in the coming months. As I mentioned, the first topic of interest for us was really understanding the issue of speeding in our region. And our first data analysis effort was just to try to understand the extent to which speeding was involved in crashes in our region. We've learned that crash data show that Illinois has a higher number of speeding-related fatal and serious crashes than the national average, which is in our region, it's 41% of fatal and serious crashes that have speed listed as a contributing factor. Nationally, it's about a third. It's probably underreported both locally and nationally. Speeding is a hard contributing factor to capture, and recent changes to our crash reporting forms make it difficult to track it over time. It's also important to note that all states measure speeding and indicate it differently on crash reports. So you have to take this data with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, a major contributing factor to safety in our region. We've also learned that crash reports don't tell us the whole story of traffic safety or speeding in our region. Crash reports are important, and they can highlight crash hotspots that need to be addressed, but they don't give us much information to go on in terms of understanding systemic design or policy issues, or even trends about where and when speeding is occurring. Let me go back here. So for this reason, we've created the Regional Speed Data Project. This is funded through an SPR grant, and the request for bids for speed probe data, I think, was due yesterday. So this project is getting underway. It's going to involve the purchase of an extensive data pool of speed probe data that will give us spot speeds across the region that are collected from devices and cars with devices on board. And our hope is to use that data to better understand patterns of speeding based on location, facility type, posted speed limit, so that we can understand the systemic issues and the systemic approaches we can take to reducing speeding in our region. What's also included, so we'll buy the data, we will have the data analyzed by a third party, and we have also purchased speed detectors that are actually in the field this summer as we try to pilot some speed studies of our own related to projects that we're doing around the region. And the hope is that we can use those speed detectors to confirm and identify speeding issues, locations with speeding issues, but also use it to do before and after speeding studies so that we can start to understand the impacts of certain changes due to the projects that we're working on and their impacts on operating speeds. Knowing that speeding is a factor in 40% of crashes in our region and likely more, we next wanted to just understand how crashes in general were distributed across the region. This graph is not intended to call out any particular county or municipality within a county. It really, there probably are some takeaways, and this is rate of crashes. So we have normalized this by vehicle miles traveled. The point here is that it's often believed that the state system is, the one with the biggest safety issues. And what we see here is that it's a shared burden, that crashes are happening at a rate that's, similar and sometimes a little bit higher on different agencies' roadways. And another important thing to understand with this is how our resources on safety are delivered to each of these types of agencies. Of course, the state has an HSIP system, of HSIP program that is specifically dedicated towards state facilities. There is an HSIP local program as well that allows local agencies to apply for safety funds, but we are noticing that even though we represent about 40 to 45% of the state's fatalities and serious injuries, we have not really been bringing in anything near that percentage in terms of HSIP local dollars to our region. So cultivating applications and projects for HSIP local so that we can allow opportunities for local agencies to address safety issues is becoming a primary focus of the safety work. We also looked at fatal and serious crashes by posted speed limit in an effort, again, to try to understand patterns without really having our speed probe data yet. And surprisingly, what we found is that the highest rate of crashes, fatal and serious crashes, these are the bad crashes, are happening on streets with a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Did I just lose? There we go. Huh. Did you guys just lose my screen?
We lost the slide that you were on.
Yeah,
again.
I can see that.
Overall
One
presentation.
second. Just kind of toggled away. Is that better?
For now, yep.
Okay, all right. So as we look at this 30 mile per hour posted speed limit, there are some things that are important to know. First of all, it is the statutory speed limit, 30 miles per hour. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about statutory speed limits in a minute. That means, though, that a large number of our lane miles have a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And it's also important to pay attention to these roads because they are often the roads that serve our business districts, our residential areas, our schools, and other community destinations. And these streets often look like this. Here's a street with a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. It's often where you see bicyclists engaging, cars parking, generally a lot of activity from different types of users. 30-mile-per-hour streets can also look like this. This is downtown Mount Prospect. Again, places where you see other modes present, and speeding is particularly dangerous on these types of roads because speed decreases our field of vision. This is a graphic taken from Jeff Spector's book, Walkable City Rules, and this shows that a field of vision at 15 miles per hour allows you to really detect objects in a wider field of vision. And the faster you go, starting at 30 and it just gets smaller, your ability to detect roadway hazards decreases. Speed also increases the distance required to stop. So in addition to that detection piece, which can take longer if you're driving fast, the time it takes to actually bring a car to a stop increases. So at 30 miles per hour, this graph shows the miles per hour on the left and the total distance required to stop at the bottom. It takes over 100 feet for a driver at 30 miles per hour to detect a hazard and bring the car to a stop. The other thing we know about 30 miles per hour is that only 6 out of 10 pedestrians will survive a crash with a car going 30 miles per hour. At 20 miles per hour, that number is 9 out of 10, and at 40 miles per hour, it goes down to 2 out of 10 pedestrians that will survive a crash. This data, by the way, was done with, adult pedestrians. So if we were to throw in any information, regarding children or people in wheelchairs or strollers traveling lower to the ground, these survivability rates would drop even further. So as we started to try to understand what our options are in terms of speed management, we wanted to look at speed limits. There are many different types of speed limits, and it's important for our partners to understand the pros and cons of each type of speed limit. I'm going to go through a little bit about each type of speed limit. The statutory speed limits are the speed limits set in the Illinois Motor Vehicle Code. And in Illinois, those include limits for interstates and tollways, highways and 4-lane roads, other types of highways, urban districts, alleys, and school zones. Statutory speed limits can be thought of as like blanket speed limits. They're in effect when there's no sign. They're in effect when no action has been taken to reduce or increase the speed limit on this certain type of roadway. Posted speed limits are speed limits that are modifications from the statutory limits. They are established through something called a speed zone, and they can be higher or lower than the statutory limits depending on factors such as facility type, traffic volumes. Posted speed limits are established in Illinois by an IDOT policy and generally include doing an engineering study, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. So we focused our efforts on statutory and posted speed limits for this work. When it comes to statutory speed limits for urban districts, it's worth noting that Illinois has among the highest statutory speed limit for an urban district. 22 states have urban district speed limits of 20 or 25 miles per hour. Illinois is 30, along with, I think, 13 other states. 4 states have statutory urban district statutory speed limits of 20 miles per hour. So in addition to having a higher urban district limit in Illinois, we've also been hearing from our partners that the language in the Motor Vehicle Code is confusing and difficult to understand. Local agencies do actually have a few options for reducing speed limits, but confusing language can make it difficult for them to avail themselves of those opportunities. And it's also really important to emphasize the interrelationship between design of a roadway and speed limits that are set upon them. The traditional process of speed limit setting and design has supported higher speeds over the decades. Many of the principles of highway safety and design have been informing our local network. And we see an inflation of speed or speed creep through the process that was identified. So what happens with the 85th percentile process, which is kind of like the insider term for the speed limit setting method, is a roadway type is identified for construction or reconstruction. The design guidance is consulted, and for many years, I'm going to go into the new and different now. For many years, it was the safety benefits of a high design speed were really emphasized. So in other words, you would want to design a facility that would still be safe for cars traveling at higher speeds. Generally speaking, this meant wider roads, it meant bigger turning radii at corners, it could mean other features that contributed to wide, straight, and flat streets. Then they would construct and design and construct those streets and conduct an engineering study, which is an observation of how drivers operate on that street. And then generally the 85th percentile speed was used as a basis for setting the speed limit. And that means that the speed at which 85% of the drivers were driving at or below was set as the basis for the speed limit. The basis for that approach was really research done that proved that speed dispersion, which is different operating speeds, was dangerous, and it can be dangerous for vehicles. But it's also important to note that this has really inflated speed limits and the design of our streets in supporting higher speeds over time. The good news is that a lot of this guidance has changed recently. Context is playing a stronger role. There's a call to abandon the 85th percentile for use in urban areas by the National Transportation Safety Board, because it is believed that it is too high of a speed limit for areas where you have vulnerable roadway users. And a new way of design and speed limit setting is emerging. A new concept, relatively new, I'd say in the last 5 or 10 years, is coming forward called self-enforcing streets. A self-enforcing road or a self-explaining road is a roadway that is designed and planned to encourage drivers to select operating speeds in harmony with the posted speed limit. So this is a speed limit and a design that is meant to constrain speed rather than improve LOS or flow of traffic, level of service. So it is, it's revolutionary actually in terms of the way traffic engineering has been traditionally done. And I like to think of it like when everyone asks, what is a self-enforcing roadway? It's kind of a confluence of a bunch of things that we're already doing, but it's pulling things together in a very concerted effort to make our streets function, to make our streets support lower operating speeds or operating speeds that are aligned with the posted speed limit. So that is traffic calming infrastructure that you may know. These can be design principles such as road diets, appropriate travel lane widths, and other safety countermeasures that are built into the design of the street. They're similar to complete streets in that they consider all users, but the mission of a self-enforcing street is to constrain speed. In addition to right-sizing roadways, self-enforcing streets combine elements of traffic calming like speed tables and humps, and pairs them with facilities that serve other modes, such as transit users, bicyclists, pedestrians. That can be curb extensions, medians, pedestrian refuges. But these streets also have a speed limit set that are aligned with the local context, which are often lower than in Illinois, the statutory speed limit. These streets also improve the information available to drivers using them. So speed feedback signs can be an important part of self-enforcing streets, and can additional speed limit signage. So I said when there is no sign up, the speed limit is 30 miles per hour. But a lot of drivers are not even aware of the statutory speed limit. So speed limit signage is one other way that can encourage slower operating speeds. There's a version of a self-enforcing road for every functional classification. They're not all local speed, local roads with speed humps. There's versions of them that can work on arterials, and they are seeing great success. And of course, they reduce reliance on police enforcement, which is part of the reason why they're called self-enforcing. But there are non-infrastructure elements, of course, to safety and speeding that are very important. Enforcement has long played a role in safety, and we wanted to dig in and understand what the actual research and data is showing. And really, it's showing that enforcement has the most positive impact, meaning reduced speeds, positive impact on safety when it is expected, visible, and consistent, and can be set up to manage equity concerns that can arise when it comes to enforcement. We've learned that visible and predictable enforcement practices work to reduce operating speeds, crash frequency, and severity. Equity must be considered in the location type and impacts of enforcement and to deter people from speeding. That's the point of the enforcement programs that are having the most success. This is a graphic that is borrowed from the City of Chicago's automated enforcement program. Many cities are experimenting with pretty broad automated enforcement speed camera programs, and they are seeing in large part extreme success in reducing crashes and crash severity. So this is operating speeds of traffic in the City of Chicago within the first 2 weeks of the speed cameras. The first period shows the first 2 weeks of the speed camera in place. The middle period is 6 months after the installation of the speed camera. And then this is at the year end of this report, which was in 2019. So here you can clearly see that the speed of traffic was reduced through the use of this kind of approach. High visibility enforcement is another approach to visible and predictable enforcement that leverages education. So they are enforcement programs that are advertised to be happening. They are coupled with information about the risks associated with whatever type of behavior they're trying to deter. In this case, it would be speeding. And they often include social media campaigns and other ways of sharing information and education related to safety and why the enforcement program is important. We've also learned that engaging with people on safety has huge benefits for projects. As I mentioned earlier, we just completed 4 safety planning projects, one in Calumet City, one in Flossmoor, one in Riverdale. And shown here is a rendering from our Bellwood project, which we also completed. Each of these projects included different forms of stakeholder engagement, which historically has not been a huge component in safety work, which has had a slightly more technical approach to addressing safety issues. But I can't underestimate how valuable the data that we collected from people was. So at this particular location, this is 25th Avenue, which is seeing a growing amount of truck traffic. And this is the Illinois Prairie Path, which isn't super well marked in this rendering. But as you can see, the Prairie Path wants to cross 25th, just shy of the intersection. And so one of the long-term goals of the community is to get a grade separation for the Prairie Path. And I think a lot of communities who have the Prairie Path would like to do that as well to overcome some of the major barriers. But in the near term, what we worked to improve was the intersection and create an intersection that would encourage users of the Prairie Path to approach the intersection, to use that for crossing. We brought it into ADA compliance and created this kind of catchment area, again, to increase the visibility of bicycle and pedestrian activity and encourage use to increase predictability again. So one of the things that came up in this project, which is why the stakeholder engagement was so important, was We actually went to go get the crash data and found a surprisingly low number of pedestrian crashes. And it was only in the stakeholder engagement meeting that we heard from people that they wouldn't touch this crossing. They wouldn't let their children near it. They thought it was unsafe, and they always encouraged their family to turn around at this location. So what we were able to identify was a barrier to mobility, and understand that people were making choices to avoid it, which is why it wasn't a higher crash location than it was showing with the data. So we're gathering this knowledge that we've collected through the projects and the policy development, and we're continuing. We're moving forward with our policy development and technical assistance efforts. We want to help our partners work to reduce speed limits where they are not safe. As I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of ways to go about this. Some of the effort will be an education effort to understand what their options are. There is, I think it's worth a discussion with our regional safety partners about how a reduced statutory limit could improve safety in our state and region. That's obviously the longer game when it comes to reducing speed limits, but an important discussion to have. We are, because self-enforcing streets is a pretty new concept, we see the opportunity to educate partners about it and generate guidance. Many of the components for complete and self-enforcing streets exists in the design manuals that are already being used, but the way that they get assembled and the way they get paired with appropriate speed limits is a new concept, and that would benefit from some effort on our part to make that clear. We will continue to provide planning and technical assistance supports. We hope to expand that program through a new federal opportunity, which I'll talk about in a minute, that Erin mentioned earlier. We're going to continue, as I mentioned, to create new data and regional safety resources. We are very close to having a safety landing page on our website, and eventually the hope is that that becomes a data resource for people as well, where they can access their local safety data to understand what their issues and opportunities are. We are going to continue to study ways to center equity in safety. It's an important topic because people of color are overrepresented in crash data and fatality data. It's important to redistribute safety planning funds in a way that overcomes disinvestment in communities over the last decades. And we want to continue to convene, coordinate, and communicate on regional safety topics. Information is very powerful, and the goal of many safety programs is to develop what's called a regional traffic safety culture, or a traffic safety culture that is really framed around our region as a community and what are our specific safety issues that we need to address and communicate on them in a careful and aligned and targeted way. And finally, I just want to mention that this federal opportunity Erin mentioned at the beginning of the meeting is something that we have devoted a fair amount of attention to, because it is a new and huge opportunity for the entire country and our region. The Safe Streets and Roads for All program is a new EJA competitive grant program. It's funded at $1 billion a year for 5 years. And the goal is to have as many communities, regions, counties, every level of government develop what's called a safety action plan. And then once you have a qualifying safety action plan, you can apply for the implementation funding in future years. So it is their way of quickly and effectively addressing the fact that many communities are not yet ready to know what their safety needs are, but to fund that and then position communities for implementation. And it is our intention to apply with a regionally coordinated application for that to help improve safety in our region. In addition to that, we're expanding and aligning our safety work with these new opportunities that are coming from the federal level, and establishing what's called the Safe and Complete Streets program here at Cmap, which will be the words you hear more often going forward than safety action agenda. So wanted to put that on your radar. With that, I'm happy and looking forward to questions and input on what we've talked about today.
Thanks, Vicki. That was a very thorough overview of the work you've been doing. Super important topic, some super sobering information in there. I do bet that the committee has lots of comments and questions, but I'm seeing that it's about 11:30 and I want to make sure we get people out of here in a reasonable time today. I'm wondering if we can invite you back to our next meeting, maybe to talk a little bit more with the group, just to hear their thoughts on what you presented today. Would that be something that we could do for next time?
Absolutely.
Great, let's plan to do that. So everybody think about what you heard from Vicki today and come to our next meeting with some thoughts on and questions related to safety, and we'll take them next time. So let's go ahead and move on to legislative updates. For this, we have John Carpenter, who's joined Cmap to give a legislative update. Up to you, John.
Great, thank you. I'll be very brief. There isn't much information to report at this point. We'll have a lot more for you in the fall. We are currently in the midst of developing our state and federal legislative agendas. We'll be updating our previous year's agendas to reflect legislative changes that have occurred since they were last approved. In September, we'll be presenting the updated state and federal legislative agendas for feedback to this committee, as well as the climate and regional economy committees and the Council of Mayors, which meets in September. We'll take that feedback, present a draft for discussion to the Cmap board in November, and seek approval for both agendas in January. So we'll have more information for you at your next meeting.
Great, thank you, John. I appreciate the update. Let's move on to other business. Is there any other business that committee members would like to bring forward today?
No, I just have a comment in the chat to keep things brief. Just a couple requests related to the safety, the excellent safety presentation.
Sure, yeah, thanks for that suggestion, Leah. We'll make sure that we take that into account and have Vicki incorporate that into her comments next time and share between the meetings as well as your request. Thanks. Any other business? No, all right. Let's move on to public comments. If we have anyone in the audience who would like to address the committee today, please notify staff in the question box if you haven't already, and they'll let us know and unmute you. While people are doing that, Doug or Mary, do we have any public comments today?
So we did receive one comment that was submitted through email in advance of the meeting. I'm going to quickly read it into record. It was from a citizen, a resident of Chicago, Samuel Largent. I am a taxpayer of the city of Chicago. The Purple Line has been a complete mess for the last few months. It never runs on time and will be almost 30 minutes. It took me over an hour to go from Wilson Central on the Purple, both in the morning and in the afternoon. It's not that many stops. I will be reaching out to the CTA and my state rep and my city rep and any and all public officials that have budget oversight over public transportation in the city of Chicago. All I want is for the train to be on time. I have a job, I do my work. I just think the CTA can do its job by being on time. Please fix the trains. And that's the end of the comment.
Okay, thanks, Doug. You were breaking up a little bit there, but I think that I heard it, and so noted for the record. And you'll be sharing that public comment in our meeting minutes as well?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay.
And Jessica?
Sure.
Just, I guess, as the CTA rep here, since this comment was directed towards CTA, on behalf of CTA, just want to thank that person for their comment and for taking time offer feedback. We apologize for that terrible experience with the service on the Purple Line, and we are looking at a number of ways to address service issues that have occurred on the system. So I guess we'll be releasing more information on that at some point in the future, but just wanted to acknowledge the comment.
Thanks, Leah. Do we have any other public comments? Doug or Mary?
I do believe that Garland Armstrong is on the line. I don't know. He's got his hand raised, so I'm going to unmute him. Oh, he's self-muted.
Yes.
Oh, there
Yes,
you go.
yes, it's me. How you doing, Jessica? And this is Garland calling from Des Moines, and I have some concerns about the Metro. I have some concerns with Canadian National, Canadian Pacific. As you know, it was on ABC7 Eyewitness News app that they're going to be going from Mexico to Canada, and it will affect the neighboring communities, including the Metro. And I just wanted to make sure that Metro, with Lynette on there, to make sure that they don't try to do this demonstrative tactics on there, because it's going to be affecting the on-time performance for Metro, and it's going to really make the residents go up in smoke why the freights are doing something like this, and it's really going to spoil a whole lot. And I'm also deeply concerned about the Elmhurst Metro station on the UP West line, because before we left, they did not have anything like accessible, especially like when the freight trains stop, either on platform 2 or platform 1 or in between. There is no ramp, no elevator to know which side the next train will be boarding. So I hope Cmap, Metro, and the city of Elmhurst will figure out a solution on how to get this thing resolved, because especially for people with special needs would like to make sure to be on that train instead of waiting about an hour or two. And also too, for the pace part, I want to make sure about the Tinley Park part, especially at 159th Street in Oak Park. Are they in progress to get more sidewalks, especially at where the bus stops are, especially so don't have to walk in the streets or something like that? Because I haven't heard anything about it when I talked to Jane, especially for Tinley Park, because they have they gotten progress with it or complete with it? And when you do have your next in-person meeting for the PACE Chicago 88 or the Joint Committee meeting, make sure that those with visually impaired and also too for hard of hearing would like to know which room is going to be in, and then have the paratransit make sure for the drop-off and the pickup location of it at the new post office. And also too, I was deeply concerned last Saturday, there was no large CTA bus when they had the Disability Pride Parade, because especially it was hot down there. And what about those, since they had a PACE bus down there, but no CTA bus? And I would like to know for future references for next year, will they have the large CTA bus for the Disability Pride Parade, especially those who are going to be marching in the parade? And they would like to know, will they have a cooling area for it? Not only PACE bus will be there, but will a CTA bus be ready for next year as a backup, because anything could happen down the road in the near future. So those are my deepest concerns, and I'll be glad to have any comments or questions from the committees.
Okay, thanks, Garland. We appreciate your feedback on all of those items. Do any of our transit partners want to share any information or feedback with Garland? Lynette?
Yeah, this is Lynette, Garland. Good to hear from you. We are definitely concerned about the merger. We are working diligently internally, as you probably heard in the newspaper articles and the articles that have been released. We did file with the STB on that. We're happy that our legislative folks here in the region have jumped on board as well and have started to raise the flag that there are going to be issues. So stay tuned on that. There's a lot more to come. Regarding the Elmhurst Metro Station, Elmhurst is in the process of upgrading their station. I don't have a status for that, so I'll have to go back and look at that, and we can get back to you on that, Garland.
Okay, Lynette, and make sure about the other stations too, like Villa Park, and also to Glen Ellen, Wheaton, and all the other stations. If they have to, if the freight train stops are in between or any platforms that they're on and they're stopping, and then they make platform announcements at which side the train's going to be on, because you need to work with all that communities to make sure that those with the general public and the ADA to make sure when is the next boarding platform going to be, so that they can be ready and extremely well prepared, so they don't have to wait about an hour or two, because they're really counting on it, because they're counting and they're testing y'all very carefully on it.
Thanks, Garland. I'll pass that along for our transportation folks.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Garland. Take care.
I can actually add something. Sorry. I can add something on this, since it's a Cmap funded project.
Doug, you're breaking up a bit. I'm sorry to cut you off, but your sound is in and out. So maybe adjust your mic a little bit. I think while you're doing that, Leah, were you going to add something as well?
Sure. I just wanted to acknowledge the comment that and question that Garland had about the CTA bus at the Disability Pride Parade. I don't actually know the answer to that, but I will look into it and see what happened there and why we didn't have a bus and what the normal practice is, and get back to you. I also wanted to say that I have a person now to reach out to for this. So we have our new ADA manager in place, and her name is Irma Gomez Fierro. So we're really excited that she's started. She's been there, I think, maybe a couple months now, but I'll look into the question. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Leah. Doug, back to you.
All right, I tried to close some things. I don't know if that made it any better.
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I'll just quickly add with the Elmhurst project. I actually just had a meeting with the village because it's a Cmap funded project this past week. They're about 30% done with design engineering. They're looking to go to construction in late 2023 to early 2024 on that project to completely reconstruct their entire station.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that update as well. Any other public comments today? I don't think so. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Our next meeting will be September 16th at 9:30 a.m. We'll be sure to have that safety action agenda on the agenda so we can talk more about that topic. And otherwise, we have no other business for today. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
We'll move to Page County.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I'll take a second.
Second.
All right, Tara, thank you for the second. Let's go ahead and take a voice vote to adjourn.
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.